Welcome back. Today is the 9th anniversary of the Marikana tragedy, a day that saw members of the South African Police Service attempting to end a mine workers' strike with lethal force, resulting in the killing of 34 mine workers. On 9 August 2012, the mine workers had embarked on a strike. Over a period of a few days, the cumulative death toll reached 44 people, which includes mine workers, Lonmin mine security personnel, and 2 SAPS officers. And as the country commemorates this day, how has the life of those surviving mine workers and their families actually changed? So to find out, we're joined by Khuselwa Dyantyi, who's a candidate attorney at the Socio-Economic Rights Institute. Khuselwa, thanks for your time. Welcome to Morning Live.
Good morning, Sakina, and good morning to the viewers.
So today is the 9th anniversary of the Marikana tragedy, and one still vividly remembers those horrific, shocking, deadly scenes in Marikana that led to what is now known as the Marikana Massacre. And of course, those events began on the 9th of August and it led up to this day. But if we look back at what actually happened, the conditions and the demands of a living wage by the miners, has life become any better for mine workers and survivors in Marikana?
It's been 9 years, Sakina, and firstly, we have to talk about the lives of the victims, whether we see any change on their lives. Number one, you remember that the families of those mine workers, they had to leave their homes because their breadwinners died. They had to go and occupy the same positions of their loved ones in the mine, and to experience the same conditions that their loved ones were fighting for. So what we have seen right now is that if you go to Marikana and you compare 9 years back, there is no change. You look at the living conditions of those mine workers, they are still living in the same conditions. You see the dusty community of Marikana, they haven't benefited at all since the massacre. And now, if you have to look again whether as the country, do we see any change? Because all of this happened because of the unwillingness of the company to negotiate with its workers. We see all of this because of the conduct of the police officers. So we ask ourselves whether there is any change between the company and between the SAPS itself.
And we'll come back to SAPS in a moment, but Khuselwa, why has it taken so long for families to actually receive any form of justice or just accountability at this stage for the deaths of those who were killed?
Like I said, it is an unwillingness from the state side, because from the beginning, we have been coming forward. The families attended, even the mine workers, they attended that commission because they wanted justice. They called on the state to come and meet with the victims. Until today, we haven't seen that. The commission itself, the Commission of Inquiry in Marikana, they made some recommendations whereby today we know that our police force needed to transform. And according to the report of the panel of experts, they did say that they have some recommendations of how the police force can manage the crowd when they're dealing with the POP specifically.
And
so,
as you say, perhaps unwillingness from the state at this point, but has there been any official word in that regard? Has the state come out to say, you know, this is why things are perhaps moving along or not moving along as they should?
I can speak on the side of the prosecution specifically, because we know that some of the events that happened in Marikana, there are some of the prosecutions, and 9 police officers have been appearing in court, but those incidents only related in the incidents of the 13th of August. So when you talk about the main event of the 16th of August, there are no prosecutions. We asked when we communicate with the NPA or the IPIT, the NPA always informed us that the investigations by the IPT were still are not complete. So there's nothing they can do on their side up until the IPT has finalized those investigations. It's been 9 years now, and you wonder whether after so long, those witnesses that will have to appear before those courts, will they still be able to remember what exactly happened in 2012? So there is this unwillingness from the state, and the families have been urging that for them to find closure, they need to know what happened. They need to see some accountability from the state.
Well, it's mind-boggling that we are still here 9 years later with not much having moved on that dial. But you work very closely as an institute with the families. What have they been going through, Khuselwa? You know, what does today's anniversary actually mean to these families?
You see, the 16th of August every year, it's very traumatic to the victims. Because number one, just before the COVID, they will always have to go to the court to commemorate this day, and with nothing on their hands, because they haven't seen any form of justice, either with the form of repatriations or some word of comfort coming from the state. They have seen even now that the state, the government is not willing to meet with them. No one from the state is willing to take accountability of what happened in Marikana. So it makes difficult for the families to find closure. Today, I know for the fact that even though the event will be probably held virtually, it's still it reminds the families. It takes them back to 2012. It takes them back to the night or the day they learned that their loved one is no more, and when they found out who was responsible for their death, the only thing that they know is that they were killed by the police. What is said again is that if these events were not captured on television, I'm not sure whether we would have been made aware of what really happened behind the scenes, because even though these were captured, it's still difficult for the families to really find closure of who really is responsible for killing their loved ones. It is going to be said day to day, and I know for the fact that the families have been calling for the state to take accountability. And what we would like to know now going forward is that what happened in Marikana must never happen again. And with that, I know it's the only way to ensure that this must never happen again is to ensure that the police force minimize the use of live ammunition when they're dealing with the crowd.
And we know that the police are known as a service, and the implications that come with naming it as such, the South African Police Service. But we also know that the then Northwest Deputy Police Commissioner General, Major General William Mpembe, was found to have lied under oath by the Farlam Commission. And he is, of course, amongst the 6 SAPS members currently standing trial for the death and attempted murders of the mine workers. What has been found, Khuselwa, to have been their roles in the events leading to the 16th of August? Are we able to clearly separate and identify the roles that were played by those who are accused?
I mean, if you remember, William Pembe was one of the senior officials in the police force in 2012. When we talk about the events of the 13th, he was the general who was leading that group on the 13th. So when during the commission, I remember when we was asked of whether who gave the orders of what we saw. I think I must just take you back. When you look at the video of the 13th, the mine workers were negotiating with the police. The police wanted them to surrender their weapons so that whether they were going to be arrested or they were going to be taken back to the copy. The mine workers pleaded with those police officers and said that we are not fighting with you and we cannot surrender these weapons because in the previous days, our colleagues were attacked by the other members of NUM. So these weapons they are carrying is to protect themselves. And we saw the police officers looked like they agreed with the mine workers, and they worked together until there was that call saying that they must disperse them. And the police, the mine workers saw stun grenades and they were confused. There were a lot of confusion because they did not understand what was going on. And in all of that, so much happened because of that confusion. They thought they were being attacked. And after that incident, we saw at least 5 people being killed, 3 mine workers and 2 police officers. All of that, it was the person who was leading that group of police was General Pembe. He was responsible of those incidents. And when you look on the other matters, who was responsible of the death of Mr. Sokanyile, Mr. Semi Jokanisi, and Mr. Mati, and the 2 police officers. In court in Mahikeng, we know today that there is 1 police officer who has been charged for the murder of Mr. Sokanyile, and General Pembe is responsible for the death of the 2 police officers.
And then the 10 deaths preceding the massacre that took place on the 16th. In terms of that, can you just tell us about what sort of proceedings, actions have taken place in that regard, and whether, in fact, all of that is also factored into the call for reparations for families?
If you remember, Sakina, after the Marikana massacre, 270 and more of the mine workers were arrested for the deaths of the 16th, and later some were released. So for the other matters related to, I think, the other mine workers that died before the 16th, there are mine workers that are being charged for that, and their cases have been going on in court. So in terms of reparations, those who were killed by the police, we know that the police is responsible to pay for those damages. And at the commission, I remember there was a recommendation from Ian Farlam saying that the company failed those mine workers, failed to protect them. They sent them to report to work, even though they saw that there was an unrest. So in terms of who must pay for those damages, I would say that the families of those mine workers, they have a right to file their civil claim against the company. So as far as I know, is that those who were killed by the police officers, which are our clients, we filed their civil claims in court, and the state paid part of it. And there is still outstanding civil claims that needs to be paid.
And with regard to the security officers and police officers who were also killed in the lead up to the events of the 16th, do you know whether they also are eligible, and have they in fact instituted civil claims?
I have no connection with their legal team since the commission, so I am not aware whether they have eventually instituted legal claims, maybe against the company or not. So I have no contact with their legal team so far.
Khuselwa, the Farlam Commission findings exonerated then Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa, who was also a non-executive director at Lonmin at the time, and other political leaders, including the current Minister of Sports, Arts and Culture, Minister Nathi Mthethwa, who was the police minister at the time. And are the families considering any civil charges against some of the political leaders?
I know the mine workers were interested in instituting legal actions against the officials. On our side, as the representatives of the families, we haven't received any instructions regarding that. But we know that on their side, they also blamed the then Deputy President, Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa, for his actions, because, you know, as the person who grew up as a union person, his action in Marikana, said something different. If he engaged, the mine workers, I don't think today would have been talking about this massacre. He felt so much. He felt the mine workers. He felt most of the unions, because he had the powers to try and engage with the mine workers, also with the company. But what we saw on the correspondence, how he dealt with the strike, you know, painting it as a criminal action and not a labor-related matter, and, you know, suggesting that it must be dealt with accordingly as a criminal act. That alone was very disappointing, coming from someone who has a history of unionism. So on the family side, even today, he is a president. He is a president now. He has never met with the families, even from their homes, not in public. He has never said anything, you know, about Marikana directly to the families, except for saying things outside where the families were not even invited, maybe, to comment. So that alone, his muteness about Marikana says a lot.
So, as it stands right now, almost a decade on, do the families still want to meet with President Cyril Ramaphosa now? Are they willing to have a conversation with him about what had happened?
Definitely. I know for the fact we have written to his office. They have invited the president, and in all the letters they sent, we've never received any response except for the acknowledgement of their letter. They do want, he is, the head of the state now. It will be very important that he try and meet the victims. And Sakina, these families, I cannot say that they were fully compensated. The money that was paid is the money that their breadwinners was due to them. So there is nothing else that the families received from the state. They want to know what the state can do for these families going forward, because we cannot rely on the civil claims that the state has paid and say this is it. There is so much that can be done in order to make things right, in order to make sure that the victims are fully compensated. Or I don't know, there is so much that the state can do for these victims, not only for the families of the mine workers, but also for those victims. I know there are mine workers who survived the massacre. Today, their living conditions, I'm telling you, it seems as if we have forgotten about them. It seems as if we we as the people of South Africa, just because they survived the massacre, now they must suffer for that. So I think there is a lot that the state needs to do to make things right with the people of Marikana.
Well, we'll have to leave it there. But thanks so much for engaging us this morning. Khuselwa Dyantyi, candidate attorney from the Socio-Economic Rights Institute, talking to us about the 9th anniversary of the Marikana massacre and the trauma still being experienced by families and survivors. And the Institute, of course, working very closely with those survivors and families, still awaiting compensation at this stage.